Halloween night has a way of peeling back reality. Streets look the same, houses stand where they always have, but something feels thinner, like the world you know is only pretending to be safe. Tonight, you're about to hear two true stories that happened on Halloween. No monsters in costumes, no fake screams, just real people who lived through something so disturbing they still can't explain it. And if you're watching this on Halloween night, you might want to check behind you before it's over. The first story happened in a quiet suburban town in the Midwest. The kind of place where Halloween is taken seriously. Lawns covered in decorations, fake gravestones, plastic skeletons hanging from trees. Every porch light on. Every street filled with kids laughing, candy bags rustling, parents chatting from driveways. For most people, it was just another harmless Halloween. For Sarah, it was the night her life stopped feeling real. Sarah was 26 years old and living alone in a small rented house near the edge of town. She worked late shifts at a medical billing office, and Halloween night was no different. She got home just after 9 p.m., exhausted, feet aching, already annoyed by the nonstop doorbell ringing she knew was coming. She turned on her porch light anyway. It felt rude not to. The first few trick-or-treaters were normal. Kids dressed as superheroes, witches, zombies. Parents standing back on the sidewalk, smiling politely. Sarah handed out candy, exchanged a few tired, happy Halloweens, and closed the door at UPY around 10 p.m. The crowds thinned out. The doorbell slowed. Sarah shut off the porch light and finally relaxed. She changed into pajamas, poured herself a glass of wine, and turned on a horror movie, something she'd seen before, something safe. That's when the knocking started, not the cheerful doorbell chime. Knocking slow, heavy, deliberate. She paused the movie and listened. 3 knocks. A short pause. 3 more knocks. Sarah frowned. Trick-or-treating was basically over, and whoever it was hadn't rung the bell. She walked to the front door and looked through the peephole. No one was there. The porch light was off, and the street looked empty. No kids. No parents. Just orange leaves blowing across the sidewalk. She felt embarrassed for being nervous and stepped back. Then the knocking came again. Louder this time. She checked the peephole again. Still nothing. Her stomach tightened. She told herself it was probably teenagers messing around. Halloween pranks. She didn't open the door. Instead, she walked back toward the living room. The knocking followed her. Not literally, but it resumed the moment she stepped away, as if whoever was outside knew exactly when she wasn't looking. This time, it wasn't 3 knocks. That it was one that hard enough to shake the door. That Sarah's heart started racing. She grabbed her phone and texted her friend Emily. "Someone keeps knocking on my door, but nobody's there." Emily replied almost instantly. "Probably teens. Ignore it." Sarah tried to do exactly that. She turned the movie back on, turned the volume up, and sat on the couch. Then she heard it. A sound she hadn't expected, scratching. Not at the door, at the window. Her living room window faced the front yard, just a few feet from the porch. Slowly, carefully, she leaned forward and peeked through the curtain. Someone was standing inches from the glass. They weren't wearing a costume, and no mask. No makeup. Just a tall man in dark clothes, his face completely blank, his eyes fixed directly on her. Sarah screamed and stumbled backward, nearly dropping her phone. By the time she looked again, he was gone. She locked every door in the house, every window, hands shaking so badly she dropped her keys twice. She called the police, voice breaking as she tried to explain what she saw. They arrived 15 minutes later. They searched the yard, the street, the neighboring houses. They found nothing. One officer told her it was likely someone playing a prank and advised her to keep the lights off and stay inside. Sarah barely slept that night. The next morning, she found muddy footprints under her living room window. Large ones, adult size. They led away from the house and stopped abruptly in the middle of the yard, as if the person had simply vanished. She moved out 2 weeks later, but that wasn't the end point. 3 years passed. Sarah relocated to a different state, different house, different job. She stopped thinking about that Halloween, or at least she tried to. Then, on October 31st, just after sunset, she heard knocking at her new front door. Same pattern. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Her blood ran cold. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. Her phone buzzed at a notification from her doorbell camera. Someone was at her door. The video feed loaded slowly, painfully. The screen showed a man standing on her porch. Same height, same dark clothes, same blank expression. And as the camera focused, the man looked directly into the lens and smiled. The second story comes from a rural area in northern England, where Halloween isn't about costumes and candy, but old traditions that people pretend are just folklore. Mark and his girlfriend Jenna decided to spend Halloween weekend at a remote countryside cottage they found online. The listing described it as peaceful, historic, and perfect for a quiet escape. The photos showed stone walls, a fireplace, and miles of fog-covered fields. It was cheap, too cheap. The owner messaged them with one strange condition: do not open the back door after dark. Ever. They laughed it off. Probably some superstition or a joke to scare guests. Still, the message stuck with them. They arrived just before sunset on Halloween Day. The cottage sat alone at the end of a narrow dirt road. No neighbors, no streetlights, just open land and silence. Inside, the place smelled faintly of old wood and damp stone. The furniture looked untouched, like it hadn't been moved in decades. No Wi-Fi, barely any phone signal. They lit the fireplace and tried to enjoy the isolation. As night fell, strange things started happening. They heard footsteps outside, slow ones, circling the cottage. Mark assumed it was an animal, a deer, maybe a fox. But the footsteps didn't sound random. They were steady, measured, human. Jenna checked the windows. Nothing but darkness. Around 11 p.m., they heard knocking. Not at the front door, the back door. They froze. The owner's message echoed in their minds that not open the back door after dark. The knocking came again. 3 knocks. Then a voice soft. Come, please. Let me in. Jenna started crying. Mark grabbed a flashlight and crept toward the kitchen, where the back door was located. He didn't open it. He just stood there, staring at the wood, listening. The voice spoke again. I know you're in there. The knocking turned violent. The door rattled in its frame. Mark shouted that he'd called the police. Even though he had no signal, suddenly, everything stopped. Silence. They didn't sleep at all. At dawn, they packed their bags and left immediately. As they drove away, Mark glanced in the rearview mirror. Standing at the edge of the field behind the cottage was a figure, tall, still, watching them leave. When they reported the incident later, they were told something chilling. The cottage had been vacant for years. The owner died a decade ago, and locals avoided the area every Halloween. Because people who answered knocking at the back door were never seen again. No bodies, no evidence. Just empty houses and unanswered questions. Halloween is supposed to be about fear you can turn off, costumes you can remove, stories you can stop listening to. But sometimes, the scariest things don't end when the night does. If you hear knocking tonight, make sure you know who's on the other side.